Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our coronavirus industry update. John Longstreet will be taking the lead today on this. As always, mute your lines and use the chat feature for questions, and John will address them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I will pass the baton to you, John.
Thank you very much, Hope, and welcome all of you today. I am filling in today for Melissa Bova, who is on a much earned and needed vacation this week. So it might not be as much fun as it usually is, but I'll do my best to try to give you accurate and timely information. As a reminder, this webinar is for the purposes of our restaurants and hotels and travel and tourism partners, and of course, any of our allied members that are interested. It's off the record. It's not a press call. We do a lot of conversations with the press. We never refuse a request for an interview. But this is not that time. So if you're with the press right now, please disconnect. And with that, we'll move forward. So the first part of what we're going to talk about today is a federal update. As you undoubtedly are aware, on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, actually, the administration and the leadership from the Democratic Party in Washington came to an impasse on the so-called COVID-4 package. And so consequently, that is stalled. On the heels of that, on Saturday morning, President Trump issued 4 executive orders. Technically, they might not all be executive orders, but they were classified as executive orders. And the 4 of those were, the first one was to defer payroll taxes for Americans earning less than $100,000 a year. This is about 6.2% that workers pay into the Social Security Fund. Most of the employer taxes had already been deferred till the end of the year, but this would defer this for employees as well. It's designed to try to help people get some money back in their pockets. It's not a forgiveness. It's not a waiver. They would eventually have to pay those taxes back sometime next year. There was also a moratorium implemented on evictions and to provide financial assistance to renters. And this is probably the weakest of the 4 because it essentially just instructs the Treasury and Ben Carson from Housing and Urban Development to see if they can find some money to help out people that would be evicted. It's not an actual program that's been established yet. It's just a directive to those departments to see if they can get some assistance to folks that might be facing eviction. Probably the one that's of the most interest is there was the third one adds $400 per week to the extra unemployment benefits through the end of 2020. Remember, they were getting an extra, those unemployed were getting an extra $600. That expired at the end of July. The catch on this is that it requires the states to cover 25% of the additional benefits. So essentially, the states have to buy into this program before any money can actually be received by those that are unemployed. It's unclear right now what states will buy into it. As of Monday, there weren't any that had signed on to it yet. And the U.S. Conference of Governors has taken a neutral position on this. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. In the order, the president did say that they could use some of the COVID relief money that the states received to pay their portion of it, but it does require a buy-in of that. So in other words, $300 would come from the federal government and $100 from the state. And the last is to postpone student loan interest and payments through the end of 2020. So the interest would actually be waived. So that would not have to be repaid. Of course, the loans would have to be repaid, but there wouldn't have to be any payments made through the end of the year. Most experts say that these orders are on at least shaky legal grounds. The student loan one probably is not. The Department of Education has the power to do that, but the other ones are probably a bit shaky. The effect of these would be to allow some space between the negotiations that took place last week and the final resolution of the COVID-4 package, and presumably provide a little bit of relief in the meantime. There was about, in very rough numbers, when you get this large, I guess it doesn't matter, there's about $1 trillion difference between what the Democrats were willing to concede on their original $3.6 trillion plan and the president's goal of having a plan that's $1 trillion. So they're off by at least $1 trillion right now. So what we can expect to happen is that probably the most likely scenario is that the House and Senate will recess as planned next week, and that they will not come back until after the conventions, which the Democratic convention is August 17 to 20 and Republican is August 20 to 24, which means that nothing would actually happen on the full COVID-4 package until September. It is conceivable that they would decide to stick around next week. At least the House might. I doubt it, but it's conceivable. And it's also conceivable that they could hash out a skinny plan this week that would help to carry over until they can get back together and put together a full plan in September. So that's why it was stalled. That's what the executive orders mean in general terms, and that's what you can expect. There was some information on the website, our website, as there always is, about the executive orders with a bit more detail, plus a commentary from Sean Kennedy at the National Restaurant Association that was very cohesive. So you'll want to take a look at that as well. Secondly, I want to take just a minute and talk about our national partner efforts. We work very closely with at least 3 organizations in Washington: the National Restaurant Association, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and the Asian American Hotel Owners Association. American Hotel and Lodging Association package and the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, also known as AHOA, are pretty comparable. The National Restaurant Association and the AHLA agree on almost all the points, except that AHLA adds a couple of points to it. The package that the National Restaurant Association is working on is called the Blueprint for Recovery. It does include the Restaurant Recovery Fund that you've seen a lot about in the press. It's a $120 billion fund that certain restaurants would be eligible for. There's 2 versions of it: the Wicker bill in the Senate, the Blumenauer bill in the House. We like the Wicker bill better because it's more inclusive. The one in the Senate, the House version, is a little bit more exclusive, but they both provide $120 billion. Most experts think that a plan that includes just restaurants, just the restaurant industry, is probably not likely to pass, but we're still very supportive of what's called the Restaurants Act. The reason is because it carves out one industry, which has only been one other industry carved out: airlines. Maybe they shouldn't have been, but they were. And the entire request for schools coming out of this is $118 billion, less than the Restaurant Recovery Fund asked. So it's another reason why it's probably not something that we should hang our hat on. It's going to get done. However, there's a lot in the COVID-4 package, such as the PPP second installment, that would be available to restaurants and also hotels, and also those that under certain requirements, and even those that receive PPPs the first time. It would make PPP expenses tax deductible, which they currently are not. It would provide a long-term loan program that would cover operating costs, the employee retention tax credit, which is very important and can save businesses a lot of money. It would bolster the EIDL loans, the economic injury disaster loans. It would provide a tax credit for PPEs that you have to buy to operate your business. It would backstop business interruption insurance claims and provide liability protection. It's a very comprehensive package. And we believe that the folks at the National Restaurant Association are doing as good a job as can be done in trying to move this forward. On the hotel side, there's a couple of additions to it. They believe in all of the same things, except there's also a commercial-backed securities market relief fund. A lot of hotels are financed through commercial mortgage-backed securities, and this would provide some relief for them. It would make structural changes to the Main Street lending facility, which is currently largely unavailable to hotels, and make that available to them. The rest of the packages are about the same, but that's what's happening with our national partners in Washington. So let me now move to the state update. I want to first talk about our priorities, and you've heard a lot about these over the last few weeks from Melissa, but I just want to review very quickly. Let me first say that there was a new co-sponsorship memoranda that was issued last night. That's what would precede legislation in the effort to get enough co-sponsors to draft legislation. This was sponsored by our friend Senator Pat Stefano, who is a staunch supporter of our industry and the PRLA, He's also the chairman of the Senate Law and Justice Committee, which oversees the PLCB on the Senate side. There's 4 components to the co-sponsorship memoranda that all move right to the needs of our industry, the restaurant industry at least. The first is that it removes the 25% occupancy requirement, but it does provide that there needs to be the 6-foot social distancing and all of the other current standards that are in place. This is a concept that is, by the way, is also used in the state of Massachusetts, where they enforce social distancing, face masking, and all of the other sanitation standards, recognizing that the actual fire code capacity, if you do those things, is irrelevant. So the first document in the memoranda would remove that 25% occupancy requirement. The second one removes the requirement that food service be required with alcohol service. So there could be drinks served without food. The third part of it expands outdoor dining to non-contiguous areas, so that if you had a licensed premise and you wanted to serve on a space that isn't connected to your property, but that you have permission to use, you can make that licensed for purposes of serving and outdoor dining as well. And the fourth waives all license renewal and permit fees, again, for restaurants and taverns for 1 year from the date of implementation. Those are obviously for folks that have liquor licenses. So it hits many of the key things that would help our industry. Excited to see it. I don't know where it's going to go. It's literally not even 24 hours off the press, and it's working its way through getting more signatures right now. But we thank Senator Stefano for his continued efforts in that regard. The other things that you've heard about in the past are Representative Todd Stevens has a bill creating a $250 million grant program for restaurants. Representative Everett's bill allows restaurants to operate at 50% capacity, which is something we've been advocating for with the governor's team. It creates, there's another one that creates additional interest-free loan options for the hospitality industry. There's one that has to do with late fees for delayed sales tax payments. There's a liability protection one, which is very important to all businesses. And of course, it assumes that you're following emergency order safety requirements. That's also by Senator Stefano. And then Senator Killian has a bill also that deals with foreclosure and eviction. Some of the licensee recovery items that we're working on include eliminating the license renewal fees, which we've talked about in the past and now are included in Senator Stefano's memorandum. Eliminate safekeeping fees, increase the licensee discount. That's what licensees, the discount they get currently 10% over what retail sales would pay. And allow licensees the delivery of wine and mixed drinks, just as they can deliver malt and brewed beverages. And lastly, to allow them to expand their licensed premises to non-contiguous areas. This is, again, included in Senator Stefano's memoranda that came out yesterday, so we're glad to see that was done. I want to talk generally about our reopening priorities. There's basically 3 that we're most focused on. One is to get restaurants from the 25% fire code capacity back to at least 50%. The second is to allow seating at bars. And again, in the original anticipation of the orders, the way the orders were written is you had to be seated to be served either food or beverages. If we feel that if that was enforced, that would take care of the congregating problem that was cited as one of the reasons why there could be no more seating at bars. Because if you're actually seated, you can't congregate. And there was already physical distancing requirements at bars. And the third would be to review and expand the indoor capacity space, which is currently for 25 people for a discrete private event indoors. So those are our priorities. And then the next slide, I believe, has a little bit about where we are on these things. You have seen or heard about stepped up enforcement, both at the state level and at the county level in Allegheny County and in Philadelphia. This is something that, frankly, we've been calling for some time. We believe that had proper enforcement been done, we could have avoided moving restaurants back to 25%. If we had been enforcing social distancing, face masking, no seat, no service, those 3 things, we could still be operating like we were operating. That unfortunately wasn't being done at a state level, and to some degree wasn't being done at the Allegheny County and Philadelphia. there's definitely been stepped up, and from everything we've heard, at least at the state level, it's being done in a fair and reasonable way, and yet it is trying to target those so-called bad actors that are making it difficult on the vast majority of restaurants that are trying to do the right thing. There was an article you might have seen last night that there was a restaurant in Pittsburgh that was closed down for a week based on a number of non-compliance items. And at least based on the article, there was probably 3 or 4 things that are fairly serious that they weren't doing, but they were closed down. And we've heard a lot about enforcement around the state and in Philadelphia. And by and large, it's been an enforcement that has discovered people are doing things right. It's been reinforcing those things that they're doing and giving them some feedback on things they can do better. So that is all good. We've talked each week about the PRLA petition, which now is at about 17,000 signatures. The concept behind this petition is to get members of the general public to help us tell the governor that we believe that restaurants can operate at 50% and do so safely, and it's a really important part of what we do. So we appreciate all of those of you who have been helping to circulate the petition. You can put a QR code in your restaurant and allow folks to scan it and immediately sign the petition. It's designed for members of the general public, not just restaurateurs, to participate in. There's been a number of public events around the state, most of which have been very positive to bring attention to the plight of the restaurant industry right now. And again, we would encourage in any of those public events that they follow all the rules, that there's not more than 250 people in an outdoor capacity, and that if they're inside, that there's not more than 25, that people are wearing face masks and they're properly social distancing. Media is another form of the strategy we've been using to try to bring attention to the fact that restaurants can operate safely at 50% just as well as they could at 25%. To date, we've had about 175, maybe 200 news features that we've participated in, about 600 million impressions throughout the state and nationwide. We definitely, the message is definitely clear that 25% will, unfortunately, is going to close restaurants, 50% can be safe. And we continue with that. We'll continue to work that as best we can. What's next? We also continue to have conversations, both directly from PRLA team and also from PRLA members and volunteer leaders with the governor's office about trying to get to 50%. And I will say that even though we clearly have taken the position that we have to debate the 25 versus 50% standard, and that we're going to take it on in the press, we still have a dialogue with the governor's office. It would be foolish to cut that off. So we're continuing discussions there. We're hopeful that there will be a point in time, and I don't think it's going to be this week. I don't know when it's going to be, that will determine that we can get back to 50%, and I'm hoping it's well before we're into the point where we no longer have outdoor dining. So we continue the discussion. We continue to lobby in that regard in a big way. And we also are working with legislators, particularly those on the Democrat side of the aisle, to help us with that support. They've been very supportive, at least in encouraging the governor to move back to 50%. So that's most of what's happening there. I also want to talk to you briefly about another happening that's taking place relative to reopening. This came up in a question last week, and literally just as we were getting on the call, a piece of information came out that I wanted to share with you. And this is about the Southwest Tavern and Restaurant Association. This is a group that just formed over the last couple of weeks in frustration because of their inability to do business at 25%. And they were, last week, the press had indicated they were issuing an ultimatum to the governor. When they actually had their meeting last Thursday, which followed our discussion about this on Wednesday, they backed off of that and they did not provide an ultimatum. They did say they want to have an audience with the governor and talk about it, though. But a few minutes ago, one of our members out in that area forwarded to me a flyer from the group that says that as restaurants and taverns open August 14th, the Restaurant Revolution is setting the industry standard for the safety of our valued guests and staff. And then they have the things they're supposed to be doing: 6-foot distancing, physical barriers, heightened levels of cleaning, CDC guidelines, be safe, have fun, and support small businesses. So I think what this is saying, according to the information that was sent out, is that they intend to open the restaurants on August 14th, contrary to the governor's order. As I said last week, we don't condone breaking the law to try to accomplish our objectives. And I understand their frustration. I've been in the business most of my life. I can't even imagine how frustrating it is right now. But on the other hand, we've always obeyed the law too. And the association firmly believes that we all should be obeying the law in that regard. But I wanted to let you know that that has come out. There certainly will be a lot of press about it today. I don't know what's actually going to happen. I just told you everything I know about it, but I thought you should know you're going to be hearing about it. I'm getting a bunch of emails about it now too, as you might imagine. So with that, that's the update. Now you can go to the next slide. And this gets into how we get a number of requests all the time about people that aren't following the rules. How can we help them follow the rules? This is the way. And I might ask if Ben, if you have anything you want to add about Philadelphia while we're looking at Philadelphia here. I didn't touch on that at all today. Ben, you want to chime in on Philadelphia?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I think this is my first time speaking on an update. Glad I was ready for that. Philadelphia definitely has been enforcing a lot more lately. You may have seen in the past weekend, anybody on the call from Philadelphia that in a team from Street, Commerce, Department of Health, going around outdoor space, of course, in Philadelphia. There's only outdoor dining right now. There is no indoor dining in Philadelphia. So they have been making sure that tables are spaced appropriately, that there is PPE around, and especially that there isn't seating for more than 50 people per restaurant license. So if anybody had any questions about any type of guidance or guidelines or rules and regulations as it pertains to Philadelphia, you can reach out to me. I'm going to have my email up and my cell phone up in the chat box. Feel free to send me a text, shoot me a call, least favorable, or an email. That's it, John. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate you getting in on this today. A few questions here, and then Hope can wrap us up. Obviously, there's not very many questions today because people only trust Melissa for answers, which is fine with me. But one was from Tracy, who talked about a general inspection she had. The health inspector told us that they had laid off so many people in her territory that she's 100 restaurants behind. Does this represent where the enforcement is? Because if it is, truly unacceptable. I don't know about the layoffs in the health department, and I'm assuming you're talking about Tracy, the county health department in your case. And I'm more familiar with what's happening with the Department of Ag and the state health department. Department of Ag has now been empowered to do enforcement, which is one of the reasons the state has stepped up. But if you're covered by a county health department, that's going to be a different story. Probably doesn't surprise me to hear this because the enforcement, even without all the COVID restrictions, was difficult. It's going to be even more difficult right now with the resources that are there. And then there was one from Jeannie about Allegheny County. I do believe that Allegheny County, I know we had talked with them about this, that it would be so much easier for them, in particular, if they were on the same standards as the state. And that was one of the things that I believe helped convince Rich Fitzgerald to bring the restaurants open for indoor dining at 25% once the governor came out with that order. There's a couple of things they differ on right now. One is the curfew for serving alcohol, and the other is the outdoor dining. And Jeannie's asking specifically about outdoor dining. I can't tell you what the progress is in getting to the full state standards. I believe that they probably have concern with the 250 number, which is still the outdoor dining from a state standpoint. We can look into that on Allegheny County and see if we can get an update though. Okay, what's next, Hope?
Sure. I mean, again, the training solutions, we've been talking about the HLA, Safe Stay, and Serve Safe Dining commitments. please take a look at this. It's just a great complement to the PA Restaurant Promise and PA Hotel Promise to include training components to your reopening strategies. Also, our Star Safe Manager courses are up and running, so please check out our website. There are half-day classes, or you can take it online and then come in just for the exam. We are adhering to all social distancing requirements with masking requirements also, so it is a safe environment for you and your employees to take advantage of getting certification taken care of. And then the next slide, Eric. Our upcoming webinars. So from all our conversations over the last 2 weeks, we do have a de-escalation training webinar tomorrow that George Giangi will be presenting, talking about just some of the things you should be thinking about, ways that you could be training your employees, and crisis, different techniques in this environment that we're in right now. But I also want to remind everybody, we have put up a lot of resources about de-escalation training, free training that you can have your employees taking advantage of on our website under the business resources. So please take a look at that. It'll be a great complement to the webinar from tomorrow, so it could be what you can take back to your employees to develop training programs for your front of the house and back of the house staff. Again, Melissa will be back next week with an industry update. And I just got an email actually from Labor and Industry. They are going to be hosting a virtual town hall tomorrow from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And it will be featuring information on unemployment compensation, where it'll be a live stream where you'll be able to ask questions to the Labor and Industry about unemployment, general questions. They won't be addressing individual issues, but I think it'd be a great way for you, your employees or for yourself to get informed and have a way to ask some questions to Labor and Industry. We'll make sure to put this up on our website and include it in our daily update. And with that, I think you may have gotten 1 or 2 more questions. I'm not sure. Nope. Looks like we're gonna have a quiet day today, John.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie, for the note. Appreciate that. And we'll do everything we can, as always. And thank you all for tuning in. And thanks for making it so easy on me today, too. I hope everything was okay from your perspective. And we'll see you next week.
All right, everybody, stay safe. Thanks so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.